Capitalism is so gauche. It's one of the founding ironies of vaporwave. And yet, we live in a paradox, because the moment any vaporwave merch drops, we become the fry meme and we rush to these merchants begging them to take our money. Yeah, definitely needed a $175 Arizona iced tea jumpsuit. How else was I gonna stay warm in the vapor pits? And I think that's what I like about MallQuest. It's just an irony-laden based video game where you just buy shit, and it's mixed with like the nostalgia of collecting children's toys. Like, hey, you remember this? And that's interesting because it juxtaposes sort of the modern viewpoint of the mall. The pandemic has made it all but certain that the mall's dominion is over. I mean, we just have liminal shells of late-stage capitalism all over the place. And dead mall enthusiasm was certainly on the rise in this era of terminally online and captively indoors. It's a form of tourism that can only truly be enjoyed in a 3D plane, which is why in this episode we're going from URL to IRL. Max Head Reviews. Before we get started with today's episode, I'd like to thank the corporate overlords over at Utopia District for giving me access to film inside of this amazing condominium suite. And of course for footing the cost for this overly luxurious, overly expensive robotic surrogate body. Yes, you nerds at home can now gaze upon this charming digital visage. I should switch it quickly to Daft Punk before I cause Utopia District to hemorrhage subscribers. MallQuest launched vaporwave into the world of gaming. Clearly a jump that was all but a certainty. Being the first game representing the genre, it was an obvious choice to jump into consumption culture. This is the mall of your memories, albeit with a new paint job. One you look at through rose-colored glasses and nostalgia blinders. Because yeah, we love remembering stuff. And I'm not treading any new ground by saying that our nostalgia is capitalized upon. We managed to commodify memories and we make it a whole personality. Are you an 80s baby? You just might be the product of a marketing scheme. Which is why it nails personality by commodification by having players run through a checklist of purchases like Sonic the Hedgehog, TMNT action figures, or VHS copies of the Jungle Book. It's nostalgia porn that allows the forehead-wrinkled millennials point at stuff at the screen like they're Rick Dalton foaming at the mouth, ready to scream, "Oh yeah, I remember that! God, life never got any better!" And by the looks of this 9th grade photo of me, baby it didn't. MallQuest narrowed the core gameplay to what every red, white, and blue-blooded American was born to do. That is spend money on trash. But honestly, that's not truly the experience. I commend the game on its biting satire, but really, MallQuest is about the feelings of what the mall meant. That game gives us a brief moment to occupy a childhood memory on our terms, on our ideals of how a child might see it. And given that memory is not the most reliable tool, it is a distorted reality based on present emotions informing us on how we felt. That's the vaporwave twist, baby. For me, the mall was a vacation, a chance to engage in the culture du jour. What were people wearing? What were the new games? Did the new Goosebumps drop yet? The internet not being what it was, the mall stood for the touchstone of relevancy, the brick and mortar manifestation of what was cool. And as we got older, it was a social jungle, the urban savanna in which to gather and form bonds and, dare I say it, expose your primate gums at your sexual interest of choice. Of course, that's if you were cool. But need I remind you, I was this guy. So yeah, my shit was lit as fuck. MallQuest of course captures this with that vaporwave coat of paint, like we shot a Nickelodeon slime cannon on a series of 16-bit Polaroids, smothering our cherished moments in a gravy of selective recall. But focusing on the music, the Mallsoft track provided by Chalet Magical is a vibe that tethers us from the past to the present. The sound of a faint memory like we're hearing underwater. But what happens when we bring our head above water? We're brought into the trigger warning, and those with weaker constitutions should avert their eyes. Present. It's odd having a front row seat to the end of the world, but you gotta admit, there's gonna be great content all the way up to the mushroom cloud as it rolls over us and melts our eyes out of our heads. Which brings me to the culture of dead mall enthusiasm. Certainly it began long before the pandemic, but bad baby COVID decimated these businesses, increasing that sweet content count of our favorite urban explorers like Dan Bell, Ace's Adventures, and Sal, just to name a few. It made me ask, what does the mall mean now? And what is the appeal of these dead spaces? Like that sick-ass college professor of yours who was definitely not banging his TA, I'ma take this class outside. And follow me as we explore one of my favorite malls, Dan Bell style, and ponder these questions. Come on, let's go.
Why are you hanging out in the mall? Like, why are you here?
It's nice to walk around and shop and you see most of your friends.
This is not Dan Bell speaking. We're still with Jupiter at Utopia District. But we thought it would be interesting to visit the Koreatown Mall as a setting to discuss the beautiful nihilism and rise of dead mall enthusiasm. MallQuest served as an interesting juxtaposition to the current state of malls as we see them today. I mean, malls still seemingly have a space in the current zeitgeist because we do enjoy physical stores, albeit it's relegated to an option rather than the option. But being drawn to dead malls, there's something different there. See, MallQuest was trying to capture our memories, and dead malls are the shells of those memories, in the face of a disillusioned present. Dan Bell, considered a pioneer in the dead mall scene, alludes in his TED Talk that there's a nihilism and depression in these spaces, but oddly in a way that makes us feel comfortable. It's like an ironic hug from the commercials that raised us. We were made to feel comfortable in these centers of commerce, having drawn short-term dopamine rushes from each purchase. But we know the world that they sold us is bullshit, but it is the bullshit we know. In writing this, I tried several times to be grander about what the appeal of dead malls were, but I couldn't divorce it from how I was feeling when watching it during the pandemic. I mean, no doubt, when I was trapped indoors, it was great to go watch these videos and look at the space. It's something about the outside world seeming abandoned made me feel very comfortable. It made me feel like I wasn't missing out, and that the world was falling apart even before the quarantine was happening. But what was my appeal before the pandemic? Something about these spaces, there's something maybe nostalgic about a place that I used to go to as a kid to feel safe and warm and mingle with people. But maybe in my present state, I think what I do like about it is the eeriness of the liminality. It's almost comforting. It's got a beautiful white noise to it. Like the background atmosphere is still there, but it's the opposite of the crowded malls we were used to as a kid. Now there's just a sort of a silence to meditate upon. Sure, there's some sounds out there in the background, but it really is just that, background noise. Maybe it's like a good feeling like ASMR gives you, or maybe it's kind of like seeking an emotion. Whenever somebody likes scary movies, they like to feel scared. And when I come here, I like to feel comfortably uncomfortable in the presence of emptiness. And there's something beautiful about that, almost meditative. I think that liminality is the key here. We're really on a high of that as a culture as of now. You know, I gotta say that the dereliction of these places makes them more interesting than almost any calculated effort in decor. The eeriness of any empty or minimally occupied space is a subtle flavor, but it feels good when it's just a taste. Personally, I like that feeling of being alone in the world. It's like a vacation to the apocalypse. Nice to visit, but I definitely wouldn't want to live there. Now, MallQuest seems to be more reflective on the era when the malls were still big, in their heyday. Whereas Dead Mall enthusiasm focuses on the late-stage capitalism of the mall bust. It was a grift for sure. We overexpanded and we crashed hard. There's so many malls that just didn't make it, and the pandemic streamlined that. Ultimately, for me, malls have become a discussion piece. Well, the dead ones, at least. I mean, these spaces represent hopelessness, specifically in regards with the cynicism to capitalism. I mean, think about it. Main Street had personality. The stores were local and eclectic. And when the age of the mall dawned and the titans of retail seized the commercial market from downtowns and placed it into the confines of a building on their own terms, you just watch these infrastructures of the, small town America, these downtowns, main streets, whatever, they just collapse, right? There was a documentary that really captured this. Jasper Mall, I really recommend you guys watching it if you're into this sort of thing. Otherwise, it would be a little hard to watch. But you see not only how small towns have had their hands forced into adapting to this model, gutting parts of their small towns and leaving them for dead, but it's showing us also what happens when the malls themselves fail in the places they're forced to adapt to. Jasper became reliant upon the mall, Jasper being the small town in Alabama. They became reliant, like I said, and it killed their original infrastructure. But now that the mall is failing, there's nothing left for that town. Job opportunities just aren't there. These small towns are completely devastated once the mall leaves. In its wake, it leaves highly abandoned sections of town. A birth of a stranger liminality. But that's a topic for another video. Now the malls are feeling some of that anguish. Although, they are corporately tied. Some of them could take the hits. Certainly the companies inside of them. But the malls, as a company, are facing their end. And it's interesting to watch their denial in the face of what is inevitably the end. They'll throw up signs like "coming soon" over spaces that, we'll never see another business. That's not going to happen. And then for the empty spaces, sometimes they'll end up throwing up sort of a picture, a stock image of a woman laughing, sipping a coffee, and holding bags, and saying generic things like, "What brings you today?" Or "Try the chicken at KFC." What else would you try? I don't think people are going there for much else. But they would just advertise something else in the mall like that, right? They keep putting up this, positive imagery like everything's going to be okay. And it just reminds me of the "this is fine" meme. The entire place is on fire and going down. There's sales all over the place, for lease signs everywhere. But they try to keep convincing you that everything's going to be okay. Even as oblivion is reaching, there's no doubt oblivion is coming for them. Now, before I go and in this part of the video, I did want to wrap it up on a pattern that I saw emerge after watching so many videos of tour after tour of each of these malls. The following space occupations that end up in the mall, these will be your red flags, like that your mall is not doing well, it's sick, and it could be terminal cancer, right? The first one I notice is if you have an army recruitment office, not a good sign. The next is cash for gold. Man, that just brings down the real estate value right there. The next one is a Dollar Tree. I don't know why, but I just see that one a lot. I guess because it doesn't make as much money, and you're just scrambling to get little bits of cash. The presence of non-commercial businesses like your city's Chamber of Commerce. Because if you're putting your Chamber of Commerce in the mall, maybe that's the only place that you feel like you can get any foot traffic, any reason for anybody to be there in the first place. But perhaps the one thing that is truly foreboding, if your GNC closes, those things could survive a nuclear winter. If it's closed, y'all done some serious mismanaging. You're fucked. Anyway, that about wraps up my thoughts about dead mall enthusiasm, its beautiful nihilism, its rise and its place in the culture, and I really hope you guys enjoyed it. It was a nice little walk through the Koreatown Plaza Mall. Fun little mall if you're ever in K-Town. But now I bring it back to the Utopia District private suite.
And that about wraps up my feelings on Dead Mall enthusiasm and ends this review. I thank you all for coming out. I love you. Good night. End of program. Oh, that's right. I forgot I'm not in virtual reality. I'm in this body, you know. I got to take advantage of it or something. I should probably touch grass. No, the internet's way better.